You know that meme or that TikTok sound or the real sound or whatever sound it is that's like he's looks like a cinnamon roll and he is a cinnamon roll and looks like a cinnamon roll but acts like something else. Anyway, that's what this video is inspired by. I explained that poorly, but basically this video is exclusively dedicated to the cinnamon roll heroes of romances. Some of these are, well, one of these is fiction, but the rest are like rom-coms and romances. So I'm excited. I feel like I've been reading not a ton of romances this year, but I've been more vocal about reading romances this year. That's what I'll say. And as a result of being more open about my romance reading, I wouldn't call it an addiction. I'd call it a pastime. I've discovered a lot of heroes that I really enjoyed. I think I've realized that I'm no longer like solely drawn to the bad boys of romance, but I also don't mind a good guy who, I guess if we're referring back to that meme that I really botched, would be the looks like a cinnamon roll is a cinnamon roll. Oh, I remembered. It's looks like a cinnamon roll could kill you, and then etc etc. But all of these are heroes who look like cinnamon rolls and are cinnamon rolls. Or maybe they look like they could kill you, but they are a cinnamon roll. I'll leave that for you guys to determine. I know there must be some aversion to having the same thing every day, but I've been having a lot of homemade matcha lattes and when they're good, they're good. Like they're hitting the spot and I'm not complaining as of yet. Maybe in like a week or so, it'll be a different story. Okay, so the first book is one that I will probably talk about every week until the end of time. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. In this book we have Raymond, who is the IT guy at Eleanor's workplace. By the way, before I even go any further into any of these books, you should know that there are some spoiler alerts for these books, I guess. I don't know, depending on whether or not you think romances are predictable. Most of these have the guys' names in the back anyway, so you're fine. Anyway, Raymond, the IT guy in this book, he is just the perfect counterpart to Eleanor in the book. He opens her up to new experiences, and this book is all about his personality and not his looks. Actually, for both Eleanor and Raymond, it's emphasized that their personalities are more defining characteristics than their looks, and we definitely see this in Raymond. He is super sweet, he's humorous, and has a lovely banter with Eleanor, and he really encourages her to like think of other perspectives and empathize with others and break out of her shell socially, and just helps her like work through her social awkwardness, so to speak. So he was just what Eleanor needed at that point in her life. The second cinnamon roll hero that I want to talk about is Nick Nelson from the Heartstopper series. Probably, to be honest, another book that I will be talking about for a very long time, possibly until the day I die. The series features Nick and Charlie, and I challenge you to find a more pure love story than that of Nick and Charlie. Maybe this one would be an example of looks like could kill you is a cinnamon roll, because again, spoilers, but Nick Nelson is like the captain of the rugby team, and so you think he's gonna be this major like popular douchebag, but you meet him and he's actually so kind to Charlie, very loving and, you know, considerate of Charlie and his friends and his feelings. Everything about him is just really supportive throughout the whole series, not just the first book. And he's just one of the most likable characters I've ever read about and love interests I've ever read about. It was like a breath of fresh air to read their stories. I think that there's a fifth book coming out next year. I saw it on Goodreads, so I'm gonna say there is. Or maybe that's just my hopefulness talking. I really wouldn't mind reading more about their love story. Nick Nelson is the perfect boyfriend for Charlie. So this one is about Devon Charlie. It's called The Charm Offensive, and it's kind of based off of like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette style, you know, in terms of it being a dating show where there's a ton of different women all vying for the attentions of one guy. The whole time, you know, Charlie's kind of having this identity crisis. He needs to rehabilitate his image. That's the whole reason he's doing the show. And then we have Dev, who works like backstage on the show. I think he's the producer. Yeah, he's the producer. Their connection, I think, is really special because I feel like Dev really helps Charlie navigate through a lot of the feelings that he's experiencing. They have a nice bond that you just see kind of develop over the course of the show being filmed. Charlie is, again, like one of those heroes that you can't really find many faults with, besides like that mild insecurity he has about himself, and we see his growth not only personally but with his relationship with Dev. So this one's a really good one. It was really sweet. Really nice to read if you are a fan of The Bachelor / Bachelorette, because it mirrors that show in terms of its format. So Alexis Hall, Rosalind Palmer Takes the Cake. So this is the same author of Boyfriend Material, and this one is also kind of based on a reality show. I did not realize I picked two books like that while filming this. This one is kind of like the format of the Great British Baking Show, where every week there's a different kind of thing that they're baking, and Rosalind Palmer is obviously a contestant on the show, as is the love interest, who is Harry. Harry is kind of like almost like a Nick Nelson type of character, where he's described as like this brute who you think doesn't really know much. He's not really that intelligent, but then he has more presence in the book, and you just see that there's more to him that meets the eye. There's more underneath the surface. Kind of reminds me of Eleanor Oliphant in terms of like, yes, it's British and there's British humor, but also the way that Harry and Rosalind Palmer have their dynamic is very similar to that of Eleanor and Raymond, where he's kind of helping her kind of realize what is missing in her life. Not that you need love interest to complete your life, but they just go so well together, and you see that in the conversations they have and the moments they have together in this book. He's like one of those Raymond type characters where the more you find out about him, the more you see that he's actually a really sweet person, and there's a lot to be unpacked in terms of who they are as a character. This one is a book that I liked a lot, but it does start off with heavy topics, so please look into trigger warnings before reading this book. This one is called Float Plan by Trish Dollar, and I loved this one. It's a pretty short read, as you can see, so you can probably read it in a day or two. And this one has Keen. First of all, Keen is Irish, which means he probably has an accent, which, do with that what you will, but I just want to let you know that personally, for me, that was a big win. So Keen is someone who meets our main character, Anna. They kind of meet on the sea. Anna is basically taking her sailboat out as a kind of like way to deal with grief, and she meets Keen along the way. The reason why Keen is so great in this book is because he gives a little bit of humor that this book kind of needs to lift itself up from the tragedy that occurs in the beginning, but he's also just there to listen to Anna and be like non-judgmental and supportive and a shoulder for her to lean on, and I think that's a really important person to be, especially when someone is dealing with so much. And that's like BFF status right there. Like, that's something that a best friend does for you. So when you have a love interest who can also have the capacity to serve in a friendly, supportive way, I think that that's the kind of thing that helps relationships go a long way. And so we see that in this book, and that's kind of the reasons that I loved it so much. The last book with the cinnamon roll hero that I identified is Part of Your World. This is the first Abby Jimenez book that I read. It probably won't be the last. I love this one so much. In this book we have Daniel Grant. He is a carpenter who works in a small town, and he meets the main character, Alexis. There are a lot of circumstances that bring Alexis and Daniel together, so it almost feels like they're fated or soulmates or something. But Daniel is really sweet. He is someone who just wants to be with Alexis despite the age gap where she's older than him. You can tell that he really just wants to kind of like not even prove anything to anyone, but show the world that he loves her and that they have a really great foundation of friendship for their love as well. I think that that's the sweetest thing a guy can do, is not to be someone different, in private versus in public, which can be easy to do given kind of the unorthodox nature of their relationship, I guess, but he doesn't let that bother him. He doesn't let it hinder the way he loves her or the amount of love that he has for her. I really think that that's a sign of like maturity despite the age gap. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders. Like, he's the definition of a cinnamon roll hero. I think actually he might be the character who inspired me to make this video, because I remember finishing this book and thinking, wow, that character was perfect in every way. Like, I know I said that about a lot of the characters in these books, but Daniel Grant is one who like communicates and who likes to communicate. He isn't scared to talk about how he feels and what his wishes are and what he wants from a relationship and from Alexis. And the fact that he can advocate for himself that way was a really positive character trait that I saw in him. So those were the cinnamon roll heroes of the romances I've been reading lately, and I do look forward to being introduced to more cinnamon roll heroes at some point. But actually my upcoming rates are going to be kind of veering in the opposite direction. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm excited, and you'll see what I'm talking about hopefully next week or maybe the week after. I don't know. I'm planning to read a lot of different romances than the ones I talked about today, and we'll see. We'll see. that's all I can say. I'm going to go enjoy some of my matcha and hope I don't experience any adverse side effects from the amount I've been drinking lately. And I will see you next week. So bye.